Chapter 31. The state of innocence of the angels in heaven. What innocence is and its nature, few in the world know, and those who are in evil know nothing at all about it. It is indeed visible to the eyes, as seen in the face, speech and movements, particularly of little children. Yet it is not known what innocence is, and still less that it is that in which heaven is stored up in man. In making this known, I would proceed in order, and speak first of the innocence of childhood, then of the innocence of wisdom, and lastly of the state of heaven in regard to innocence. The innocence of childhood or of little children is not genuine innocence, for it is innocence not in internal but only in external form. Nevertheless, one may learn from it what innocence is, for it shines forth from the faces of children and from some of their movements and from their earliest speech, and affects those about them. It can be seen that children have no internal thought, for they do not yet know what is good and what is evil, or what is true and what is false, of which such thought consists. Consequently, they have no prudence from their proprium, no purpose or deliberation, thus no intention of an evil nature. They have no proprium acquired from love of self and the world. They do not attribute anything to themselves, regarding all as received from their parents. They are content with the few insignificant things presented to them and delight in them. They have no anxiety about food and clothing, and none about the future. They do not look to the world and covet many things from it. They love their parents and nurses and their child companions with whom they play in innocence. They suffer themselves to be led. They give heed and obey. Being in this state, they receive all things with their life. Therefore, without knowing why, they acquire becoming manners, learn to talk, and have the beginning of memory and thought, their state of innocence serving as a medium whereby these things are received and implanted. But this innocence, as stated above, is external, because it belongs to the body alone and not to the mind, for their minds are not yet formed, the mind being understanding and will, and thought and affection therefrom. I have been told from heaven that little children are especially under the Lord's care, and that they receive influx from the inmost heaven, where there is a state of innocence, and that this influx passes through their interiors, and that in its passing through, their interiors are affected solely by the innocence. It is because of this that innocence is shown in their faces and in some of their movements and becomes evident. Also, it is this innocence by which parents are inmostly affected and that gives rise to the love that is called natural affection. The innocence of wisdom is genuine innocence, because it is internal, for it belongs to the mind itself, that is, to the will itself, and thence to the understanding. And when there is innocence in these, there is also wisdom, for wisdom belongs to the will and understanding. This is why it is said in heaven that innocence dwells in wisdom, and that an angel has as much wisdom as he has innocence. This is confirmed by the fact that those who are in a state of innocence attribute nothing of good to themselves, but regard all things as received and attribute them to the Lord. Also, they wish to be led by Him and not by themselves. They love everything that is good, and they delight in everything that is true, because they know and perceive that loving what is good, that is, willing and doing it, is loving the Lord, and that loving truth is loving the neighbour. They live contented with what they have, whether it be little or much, because they know that they receive just as much as is good for them, those receiving little for whom little is useful, and those receiving much for whom much is useful. They also recognize that they themselves do not know what is good for them, the Lord alone knowing this, for in all things that He provides, He looks to eternal ends. Neither are they anxious about the future. Anxiety about the future they call care for the morrow, which they define as grief on account of losing or not receiving things that are not necessary for the uses of life. With companions they never act from an evil end, but from what is good, just, and sincere. Acting from an evil end they call cunning, which they shun as the poison of a serpent, since it is wholly antagonistic to innocence. As they love nothing more than to be led by the Lord, attributing to Him all things that they receive, they are removed from their own proprium. And to the extent that they are so removed from their own proprium, the Lord inflows. In consequence of this, whatever they hear from Him, whether by the word or by means of preaching, they do not store it up in their memory, but instantly obey it, that is, will it and do it, their will being itself their memory. For the most part, these outwardly appear simple, but in internal things they are wise and prudent. These are meant by the Lord in the words, "Be ye prudent as serpents, and simple as doves." Such is the innocence that is called the innocence of wisdom. Because innocence attributes nothing of good to itself, but attributes all good to the Lord, and because it thus loves to be led by the Lord, and the reception of all good and truth from which wisdom comes is derived therefrom, therefore man has been so created that during his childhood he is in innocence, though external, and when he becomes old he is in internal innocence, to the end that he may come by the former into the latter, and from the latter return into the former. For the same reason, when a man becomes old, he dwindles in body and becomes again like a little child, but like a wise child, that is, an angel. For an angel is a wise child in an eminent sense. This is why in the word, a little child signifies one who is innocent, and an old man signifies one who is wise, in whom is innocence. The same is true of every one who is being regenerated. Regeneration, as regards the spiritual man, is rebirth. Man is first introduced into the innocence of childhood, which consists in knowing what is true and doing what is good from the Lord only and not from himself. and in desiring and seeking truth only because it is truth, and good only because it is good. As man advances in age, good and truth are given him by the Lord. At first he is led into a knowledge of them, then from knowledge into intelligence, and finally from intelligence into wisdom, always accompanied by innocence, which consists, as has been said, in his not being able to know anything of truth or do anything of good from himself, but only from the Lord. Without this faith and a perception of it, no one can receive anything of heaven. Therein does the innocence of wisdom chiefly consist. As innocence consists in being led by the Lord and not by self, so all who are in heaven are in innocence. For all who are there love to be led by the Lord, knowing that to lead themselves is to be led by the proprium, and the proprium consists in loving oneself. Also that he who loves himself does not suffer himself to be led by another. Therefore, so far as an angel is in innocence, he is in heaven, or to the same extent in divine good and divine truth. For to be in these is to be in heaven. Consequently, the heavens are distinguished in accordance with this innocence. Those who are in the outermost or first heaven are in innocence of the first or outermost degree. Those who are in the middle or second heaven are in innocence of the second or middle degree, while those who are in the inmost or third heaven are in innocence of the third or inmost degree, and are therefrom the veriest innocences of heaven. For more than all others they love to be led by the Lord as little children by their Father. For the same reason, the divine truth that they hear immediately from the Lord, or mediately through the word and preaching, they take directly into their will and do it, thus commit it to life. This is why their wisdom is so superior to that of the angels of the lower heavens. These angels of the inmost heaven, being such, are nearest to the Lord, from whom they have innocence, and are so separated from the proprium that they live, as it were, in the Lord. In external form they appear simple, and before the eyes of the angels of the lower heavens they seem as little children, that is, as very small and not very wise, although they are the wisest of the angels of heaven. For they know that they have nothing of wisdom from themselves, and that to acknowledge this is to be wise. What they know is as nothing compared to what they do not know. And they say that knowing, acknowledging, and perceiving this is the first step towards wisdom. These angels are naked, because nakedness corresponds to innocence. I have talked much with angels about innocence, and have been told that innocence is the being of all good, and that good is therefore good to the extent that it has innocence in it. Consequently, that wisdom is wisdom to the extent that it partakes of innocence. The same is true of love, charity, and faith. Therefore, no one can enter heaven unless he has innocence. This is what is meant by the Lord when he says, "Suffer little children to come unto me, and forbid them not. For of such is the kingdom of the heavens. Verily I say unto you, Whoever shall not receive the kingdom of the heavens as a little child, he shall not enter into it. There, as elsewhere in the word, by little children is meant those who are innocent. A state of innocence is also described by the Lord in Matthew, but by correspondences only. Good is good so far as it has innocence in it, for the reason that all good is from the Lord, and innocence is a willingness to be led by the Lord. I have also been told that truth can be conjoined to good and good to truth only by means of innocence. So it is also that an angel is not an angel of heaven unless he has innocence in him. For heaven is not in anyone until truth is conjoined to good in him. Hence the conjunction of truth and good is called the heavenly marriage, and the heavenly marriage is heaven. Again, I have been told that love, truly conjugal, derives its existence from innocence, because it derives its existence from the conjunction of the good and truth in which are the two minds of husband and wife. This conjunction, when it descends, presents the appearance of conjugal love, for married partners are in mutual love as their minds are. This is why in conjugal love there is a playfulness like that of childhood and innocence. Because innocence is the very being of good with the angels of heaven, it is evident that the divine good that goes forth from the Lord is innocence itself. For it is that good that flows into angels and affects their inmosts, and disposes and fits them to receive all the good of heaven. It is the same with little children, whose interiors are not only formed by means of innocence flowing through them from the Lord, but also are continually being adapted and disposed to receive the good of celestial love, since the good of innocence acts from the inmost. For that good, as has been said, is the being of all good. From all this it can be confirmed that all innocence is from the Lord. Thus it is that in the word the Lord is called the Lamb, for a lamb signifies innocence. Because innocence is the inmost in all the good of heaven, it so affects minds that when it is felt by anyone, as when an angel of the inmost heaven approaches, he seems to himself to be no longer his own master, and is moved and, as it were, carried away by such a delight that no delight of the world seems to be anything in comparison with it. This I say from having perceived it. All who are in the good of innocence are affected by innocence. And to the extent that anyone is in that good, to that extent he is affected. But those who are not in the good of innocence are not affected by innocence. For this reason, all who are in hell are wholly antagonistic to innocence. They do not know what innocence is. So antagonistic are they that so far as anyone is innocent, they burn to do him mischief. Therefore they cannot bear to see little children. As soon as they see them, they are inflamed with a cruel desire to do them harm. From this it is clear that man's proprium, and therefore the love of self, is antagonistic to innocence. For all who are in hell are in their proprium, and therefore in the love of self.